But it's part and parcel. Part and parcel. Part and parcel. So it's okay. We don't need to sit on semantics, yeah? You don't need to sit on semantics. Point is, everything that's true. Everything that's true of the Father is not true of the Son.
When it comes to attributes, you are saying that these attributes are merely just descriptions. Obviously, in a certain field of philosophy known as semantics.
One second. Take your phone off. I want to see who I'm speaking to.
The person making the argument doesn't matter, but the actual point in the argument matters. Bro, it doesn't matter about my mosque.
No worries.
My name is Thomas.
Thomas, fine. How many gods do you worship?
One.
Okay, define one. Define one.
One is literally just the number one.
No, define one. What do you mean by one?
What we mean by one is that there's one God in essence and there's three underlying.
No, define the word one. Like one camera. I'm not asking you to define camera. I'm asking you to define one.
Okay, so what would one be?
Not you. You're next. You. No. Thomas first. And then you next.
Literally one is just one and nothing else.
No. What do you mean by word one? What does it mean? What does one signify?
It literally just means one essence. It means one in essence.
This is one tripod, right?
Yeah, but
am I asking you?
One tripod.
Am I asking you to define a tripod or the word one? I'm asking you, Thomas, to define or explain what you mean by one.
Literally what we mean in mathematics when we say the term one. It just means
keep spouting heresies. By the way, that's a heresy.
What is one?
Nice guy.
It just means it just means one thing, bro.
That doesn't make any sense.
You are failing to understand and explain what is one.
Okay, explain for us.
No, I'm not going to explain. You answered my question already without even understanding what one is. I asked you, do you believe in one God? He says, yes. God. What is one?
But you can literally understand what one is just from basic mathematics.
Because you don't, that's why the dispute is. What is one?
One is just a self-defining word. It's literally anything in reality which isn't other.
What does it mean? Christians do not understand one. I can tell you that.
Okay, show us what one is, bro.
Firstly, you tell me, what does one mean?
One is just another respect.
What does one mean, Thomas?
Ehad can be like one in like multiple respects. Like one is.
What does one mean?
Yeah, it's literally the lowest cardinal number. This is what I've been telling you.
It's just the lowest cardinal number.
As opposed to 2.
Yes, yeah.
So what's the difference between 1 and 2?
Or zero. It's literally one.
Or 0. Good. What's the difference between 0, 1 and 2?
Let's be consistent.
What's the difference between 0, 1 and 2?
1.5.
I gave you 3 numbers.
Yeah, the difference
0, 1
between
and 2.
0 and 1 is literally just plus 1. The difference between 1 and 2 is
We literally use it as a place.
So 2 is more than 1.
yes.
And 0 is less than 1.
Is that 3 hands or 1 hand?
Yes? Good. Good. So, Thomas, I'm not listening to your atlas. I'm speaking to you and consulted on you, right? So, you don't have to show your face, no problem, because you're a Christian.
Let me ask you, is Allah absolutely one?
Wait.
Is Allah absolutely one?
Wait. Now, my next question to you to understand the word.
Doesn't want to answer if Allah is absolutely one.
Excuse me. What is the difference? Is there a difference between 2 in 1 and 3 in 1?
Yeah, there's a difference because there's
What is the difference?
It's 3 underlying realities, 3 subsistent relations which are identical to the one divine essence.
Who's talking about God?
Yeah.
I'm asking you, what is the difference between
you're clearly
Thomas,
referring to the Trinity.
Thomas?
Now tell us, is Allah absolutely one in all senses?
Don't waffle.
Is he absolutely one in all senses? Answer that question.
Is there a difference?
Answer that question.
Answer that
Thomas, be a man of courage and bravery.
Yeah, I just told you there's a distinction.
Wait, we have not gone past. I want you to answer
Thomas,
wait, listen.
There's a distinction between the attributes of Allah. Answer
Thomas, I have not gone past understanding what one is yet.
He doesn't want to answer that question.
Thomas,
because he knows Allah's composite.
Is there a difference between 2 in 1 and 3 in 1?
Can I ask a question?
I just told you, yes there is. Now,
No, you can't. No, you can't. No, you can't.
Between Allah's attributes.
What is the difference?
So 3 in 1 exists, right?
No, you can't.
What is the difference, Thomas?
Does 3 in 1 exist?
Thomas, are you going to let your hecklers to stop?
He's not. I'm not heckling.
So,
You're a
I'm talking to him.
heckler.
Show him some respect.
Does 3 in 1 exist?
Show him some respect. So, what is the difference between 3 and 1?
Take a ticket away in line.
The difference between 3 in 1 and 2 in 1 is 3 underlying realities being identical to one thing and 2 underlying realities being identical to one thing.
Good.
Now
Wait,
answer this question.
No, we've not
Is
done that.
Allah's attributes really distinct?
Do you think I asked you?
Answer the question.
Hey, Thomas.
He answered your question.
Do you think?
I answered your question.
Do you
now
think?
You're going to answer
Do you
mine.
think? No.
Are Allah's attributes really distinct?
One second.
Are they really
Do you really think?
Are Allah's attributes really distinct?
Hey, Thomas,
I answered your
do you want to have a
question.
do you want to have a conversation?
Yeah, and the conversation is two ways.
No,
I've
I have
yours.
not. I have
Now
not
you're
gone
going to
past.
answer my question.
Because I have not gone past understanding what you mean by.
The reason why Mansour
Why are you
doesn't
talking
want
to that
answer
camera?
the question is
Speak to
because
me
he
if
knows
you're brave
there's
enough.
a distinction between the attributes of Allah. Then Allah is made up of parts. A part is just something which is less than the whole of a thing. If Allah's attributes are less than the whole of Allah,
Who's speaking to?
Allah is made out of parts.
Thomas.
And things which are made out of parts are metaphysically
Who's next?
composite and
Who's next?
metaphysically
You?
composite things.
He's not talking to me. You next?
So
Or him?
Mansour
Who's
believes
next?
that God
You're
is
next, go.
caused.
Because he's not talking to me.
Engage with the question that I've just given you.
You've lost your chance, forfeited. You know why? Because you were not engaging with me.
Now you're going to
So now I'm asking you. Right. So I'll give you the opportunity. Come closer. Come stop forward. Stop forward.
running away.
You're literally running
Don't run
away.
away. Don't run away.
Stop
Answer
forward.
the argument.
Okay.
Answer
So
the question.
when I asked him this question,
Answer the question.
the difference between
So the reason why he doesn't
between
want to answer the question
So he's going to have
because if Allah's attributes are distinct, then he's composite metaphysically. For example,
You wanna
if
stop
I
forward?
say that Superman
You wanna stop
has
forward?
the attribute of strength,
no, he's not.
Superman has
Because
the
he's speaking to
attribute of laser
he's speaking to his
laser vision.
blind fans.
These
If he
things are
hasn't-
less than the whole of Superman.
He literally has
So
no
now,
platform. That's
the question, the reason I asked you
He
between,
doesn't want to admit that his God is metaphysically composite.
Thomas, listen to me now.
Okay,
the reason,
I've answered your question.
the reason,
Answer his question. Answer his question. Answer his
the
question.
syllogism that I just gave you.
are you going to listen?
Okay, I'll listen to
Are you gonna listen?
answering the syllogism that I just gave you.
Stop
Go.
there. Listen carefully.
Go ahead.
The reason why I asked the difference between 2 and 3 in 1, 2 in 1 and 3 in 1, there was a reason. Did you ask why? I will tell you why.
Okay, tell us.
So, just like,
Is there a reason why you're not answering my question as well, by the way?
your question will come and the answer will come too.
Okay, cool.
Wait.
I'll wait for it.
Wait for it.
We'll wait.
The reason I asked you to differentiate between the 3 in 1 and 2 in 1 is because,
Can I ask a question to understand something?
yeah, on this point.
The 2 in 1 are these two? The 2 in 1 exists then. So you're saying 2 in 1 and 3 in 1.
Conceptually,
even your argument is saying 3 and 1 exists because you're comparing it to 2 and 1.
Conceptually, anything that is 3 in 1, and listen, anything that is 2 in 1, the question is, are they the same? And you happily,
Comparing two things
listen,
that exist.
What about
because you're
99?
you're not listening.
99 and 1 exists.
You're not listening, are you? I said,
13 and 1.
conceptually, 3 in 1 and 2 in 1 is not the same as you've answered. So that's very good.
Are they
So you
real things that are different or fake things that are different?
Listen. I'm not asking about real and fake. I'm saying conceptually. We know. Wait.
know where you stand. 3 and 1. If you believe
Listen.
3 and 1 is real,
Listen
and
to
you're
me.
comparing it to 2.
Listen to me. Listen to
He
me.
believes in multiple
When
things in
someone
one.
says-
he believes God has multiple attributes in the
He
one.
already believes that Allah is metaphysically.
When someone
He's
says
not going to answer.
3 in 1,
Hey, I love Muslims, by the way, and I want Muslims to give their life to Jesus Christ. And he wants to save you. He wants to save you.
Yeah.
Your sins. As much as he loves us,
the way you can make any step forward is when you behave logically, coherently, and reasonably. So that's why we're trying to understand this.
Wait, say that again.
Wait. He said behave logically. My goodness.
What's the second?
Coherently and reasonably.
3 and 1.
Good.
Hold on.
So,
Wait, what is the? Wait, I just
because
Wait,
3
what
in
is
1,
the distinction between those three statements?
Thomas, back to you now again, yeah? So there is a difference between 3 in 1 and 2 in 1.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
Good.
Good. Now,
What is the difference between 1 and 2 in 1? Is there a
it's
difference?
literally just one more underlying reality.
Is it the same?
No.
Excellent. So
distinct.
far, listen all carefully. Thomas, listen carefully now because you have affirmed very carefully with your answers.
Well, the one isn't the same.
Wait,
The two is
Thomas.
Is distinct.
1 is not the same as 2 in 1. 2 in 1 is not the same as 3 in 1.
Okay, let's put it this way.
I have not
If
finished.
Jesus is identical.
I am going to ask you now. Is 1 the same as 3 in 1?
Is 1 the same as 3 in 1? Yes, yes.
Behold, the Lord God of Israel is
Oh my God.
Because the one, if we're saying the one is God, and Jesus, the Father, and the Holy
We're not
Spirit
talking about
are
God.
identical
We're not
to the
talking about
one
God.
They can be identical.
Thomas, act reasonably, coherently, sensibly, right?
Okay,
And intellectually,
I will act like
intellectually, and civilized as well. 5 in 1. Good. So,
Okay, what is the difference between those 5 terms?
is one same as 3 in 1?
Is one the same as 3 in 1? It depends with what respect you're using the term one.
Different ways.
If you're using the term one
Explain.
in the same sense as you're saying 3 in 1, if that is the one that you're referring to, then that one is going to be identical to those 3 things. That's what it's going to be. Now I want to
No, we're not gone there yet.
On my argument against
you will have the opportunity to answer, ask about Islam, no problem.
I've been waiting for the answer.
Be patient. We need a lot more patience, right?
Waiting to tell
You
us
need
why
to
God
be
is
more
competent.
patient, right?
fair, we
It's a
are
good
giving
thing
you
to
a
have
very
patience.
big platform.
Good. So now, the reason why.
That you haven't yet answered.
Yeah, you haven't answered my question.
Can 2 in 1 can 2 in 1 ever be 3 in 1?
2 in 1 is not the same as 3 in 1.
Can it ever be same
Can it ever be the same?
in any circumstance?
It's only going to be the same as the one thing it's identical to. But the 2 and the 3 in 1 aren't going to be the same thing. Because in
Can
one sense,
2 in 1 ever be the same as 3 in 1?
I just gave you an explanation.
Which is?
The explanation is that the thing that those 2 things are identical to is going to be the same thing in that sense that the 3 things are identical to. The difference is just that there's one more thing which is identical to that one.
So
we're
my
saying
question
that
to
the
you
Father,
is-
the Son and the Holy Spirit are
We're not talking about
identical to
Trinity.
the one God.
We are not talking about God.
Bro,
We are
you're
talking
clearly
about.
insinuating
Look,
Trinity.
we will go to understand Trinity in a bit later. Let's
Okay,
understand.
after we talk
Let's
about Allah
understand
being competent.
because you firstly. The reason why I say this from experience. I've spoken to Christians, many Christians, maybe even before you were born. I've spoken to them. Yeah. That is not an argument. That is not an argument. But that shows my experience.
Okay.
Good. So
We don't care about your
It's not an-
experience, we care about the argument.
Look. The experience tells me.
Or experience, we care about
My experience tells me Christians do not understand things like 1, 2, 3, and they don't understand the numbers.
We do.
So now,
We understand
good.
identity statements.
So now you are saying 2 in 1 can be 3 in 1.
No, that's not what I said. If everyone listened to what I said, the thing that those 2 things are identical to, which is the one, is going to be the same thing that those 3 things in the other example are identical to, which is the one.
That's not what I'm asking.
But the 2 is not the same as the 3 because that would be 3 things.
That's not what I'm asking. I am saying
Question then.
conceptually, can 2 in 1 of anything ever be identical to 3 in 1 of anything?
Okay, it depends what you mean, okay? So when you say can 2 in 1 of anything be identical to 3 in 1, the 2 things aren't going to be identical to the 3 things. However, when 3 things are identical to
Shall I give you an analogy?
the same one.
Okay, let me give you an analogy for you to understand, like you said. Right, I'll give you an example.
Giving an example is going to lead to the same problem.
1 apple and 1 banana. 2 fruits in 1 basket. That's 2 in 1. 2 fruits in 1 basket.
Okay.
1 apple, 1 banana, and 1 orange. 3 fruits in 1 basket.
Okay.
Wait.
So,
I've not
go
asked
ahead,
my
go on.
question.
I'll let you speak.
2 in 1 and 3 in 1. Yeah? Now, are they the same?
Okay, can I speak? Okay, when we say that Jesus, the Father, and the Holy Spirit is God, what we're saying they're identical to is the essence of God. When you're saying there are fruits in a basket, those fruits are now part of the basket. They're not like identical to the basket. This is more equivalent to what you guys believe with the attributes of Allah because they are parts of Allah. We don't believe these are parts. We believe these are identical to the oneness of God. The Father is identical to the one essence of God. The Son is identical to the one essence.
Let's see. Give me the classical law of identity.
The classical law of identity. Okay.
Wait, if he's tapping in, can I tap in?
Are you scared? Are you scared? Are you scared? Classical law of
He
identity.
can come in, but only one person.
There's
Classical law of
multiple
identity.
rules for the classical.
All of A equals A.
Yeah. So
No,
you
no,
have
no. What's the classical law of
reflexivity.
identity?
Okay, you have reflexivity, which is just A equals A. You have symmetry, which is just if A equals B, then B equals A. You have transitivity, which is what you're going to get at because you're a Muslim mathematician fanboy.
No. You're going to violate transitivity, or you're going to go into modalism.
We're going to show you metaphysically why there are opaque
This is important. Okay, you obviously understand that transitivity is an inference rule, correct?
Mate, simple.
doesn't know what he's talking about.
I know what an inference
Okay,
is.
yeah.
I don't need you to be condescending.
I'm not being condescending. You can't even see the emotion on my face. I'm asking you
It's
this.
Take it off then,
you're
have a look.
hiding.
I don't need to. So,
Then why do
when
you
we
ask?
talk about transitivity, yeah, because you said I'm being condescending, which would evoke emotion. So, again, if you're asking about transitivity, we all know, as well as he and me and all of us here, it's an inference rule. Right. Now, there are certain cases that we know in semantics and semiotics where inference rules don't carry over. For example, when opaque contexts are created. I'm sure you know this as well.
Explain.
An opaque, do you know what an opaque context is?
Explain. Don't
I'm
ask me about
asking
do I know or not. Explain.
They don't know.
I'm asking you if you know so I can know how much...
I don't know. Go on, explain.
Okay, that's fine. So an opaque context would literally just be a situation in which the truth value of something wouldn't be carried over by transitivity salva veritate.
Can you say that again?
So basically when the truth value of one proposition won't carry over to another one, keeping the same truth value salva veritate.
What do you mean by the last statement?
Salva veritate.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, it's Latin, right. It just basically means without the truth being hindered. Basically, for example, if I said, basically what's going on is that we understand that in transitivity, there are some cases which don't violate classical identity, it's just the way that semiotics works. There are certain cases where transitivity doesn't apply as a valid inference rule in this case.
For example, when there are opposing relations.
Right.
So
Well,
for
for
example,
Give an example.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, I'll give you an
I'll
example.
give an example, fine.
Okay, you give the example.
So
Cool.
for example, like let's say Lois Lane knows that Superman can fly, right?
Lois Lane knows that Superman can fly.
We're all familiar with the Superman franchise, right? I like it. It's a pretty good comment. Cool. Premise one, Lois Lane knows that Superman can fly. Premise two, Superman is identical to Clark Kent. Therefore, conclusion, Lois Lane knows that Clark Kent can fly.
Okay.
Obviously, the conclusion doesn't follow because Lois Lane does not know that Clark Kent specifically can fly because she has two different opaque contexts. The opaque context is created because there is a specific term which is Lois Lane knows. That does not carry over in truth value. The truth value of proposition 1 does not carry over to proposition 3.
Just stop there to explain.
Yes.
So are you saying when Lois Lane says Clark can fly, is Clark Kent the human side of things or the supernatural side of things who can fly?
Superman is always supernatural.
So supernatural. So Superman.
Are they identical?
Superman and Clark Kent.
Yeah, are they identical?
Right, that's fine.
Yeah.
They're nominally distinct. That's fine.
What? How are they identical?
They're nominally distinct.
No, explain. How are they identical?
In an absolute sense.
In an absolute sense.
Yeah.
In a relative sense, they're not identical.
So no, I wouldn't
No,
say
they
in a
are
relative
identical.
sense.
It's like
The
if you
problem
put on a
is that,
cake.
hold on. The problem is this, right? The entire statement contains truth value. The truth value is the entire statement, i.e., Lois Lane knows Superman can fly.
Okay.
You are dealing with the issue of Superman. We all agree Lois Lane knows that Superman can fly. However, we all agree also that she doesn't know Clark Kent can. That doesn't violate identity. It's just that transitivity doesn't work here because of an opaque context.
So she can't not say, or she doesn't know that Clark can fly.
No, as in the specific truth state, like the statement.
That's what I'm
itself is
saying. In that
false.
statement,
The statement
she
itself is
doesn't
false.
know Clark Kent can fly.
Yeah, she doesn't know the person known as Clark Kent can fly.
Okay. The reason because she doesn't know Clark Kent is Superman.
Pardon?
Because she doesn't know Clark Kent is Superman, or Superman is Clark Kent.
Yeah, that's because the opaque context creates that.
Exactly.
So, for example, we agree with that.
Truth statement in reality, she doesn't know Clark Kent is Superman or Superman is Clark Kent.
Okay, but what we're doing with the truth statement is we're isolating, right, specifically down to the actual truth value itself. I could boil it down to.
No, I've understood the example.
The reason boil it down to
the reason why she doesn't
you're doing
know
that is trying to add on certain context to change the actual statement to itself.
No, I'm
Yes,
simply
actually.
saying when you say someone knows about someone, you're talking about she doesn't know that they're equivalent. Does she?
Right. So then that means well, it doesn't matter because equivalency has to carry over. Transitivity dictates
she
that it has to
doesn't
carry
know.
over. Yes.
She doesn't know. The question is about.
That's the point
The
he's
question is
making.
not about whether. Wait.
That's the opaque context
No,
that's
you
created. And you understand that as
you
well.
don't understand my point.
Does transitivity
I am
carry
saying-
over? Wait, there's a bee on your face.
I am saying.
Does transitivity
You're not
carry
listening.
over in premise 2?
Are you going to let me speak?
That's what I'm asking.
I'm saying
Yeah, go on.
it's not about whether Clark Kent is Superman or not, it's about her knowledge of Clark Kent and Superman being the same.
That's what the opaque context is.
Wait. The question is not about Clark Kent.
The point is Clark Kent and
You're
Superman
not
are the same
letting me finish. Here, in reality, we want to know in the truth value of whether Clark Kent is Superman or not.
Wait.
Not about whether she knows something.
Truth value, we're talking, okay, so truth value has nothing, hold on. Truth value has nothing to do specifically with whether the information is sound, it's specifically on whether the information is valid. We are looking at the actual statements themselves.
We are saying, you hold on and let me speak.
I'm continuing. So the statement, for example, yeah, it's fine. So
look,
see how
are you trying to convince yourself?
Hold on, it's not about convincing myself.
Then let me
I'm literally going to continue what I'm saying. Calm down. So,
wait.
It's okay.
What are you explaining?
Calm down, I'm going to finish.
What is my objection? What is my objection?
When it comes to...
No, what is my objection?
Your objection, actually, I wouldn't say that you've made an objection. I would say that you're trying to create one on the spot.
Which is?
I don't know which one it is.
Then you say that because you don't know.
Hold on.
Objection, even
what we're trying to say, he hasn't created one yet. That's what I'm saying.
So I am telling you this.
What would his objection be then?
Mate, he asked you just repeat the objection.
No, I'm asking you what his objection would be.
He said
I'm not saying that he's made an objection.
Area. He said you're focusing on Lewis Lane knowledge, but that's not the point he's making.
But the knowledge that I'm making is that opaque context can be created. That's fine.
Well, you're the one that brought it.
Okay, respond to my objection.
Yeah, right. So specifically the point that I'm making. And
respond to my objection.
I'm going to clarify the actual issue that's at hand here, which is that opaque contexts don't violate transitivity. So, and I think you will agree with this, right? Opaque contexts will be created depending on the certain terms that we are using. So, in premise 1, the entire statement is true. That Lois Lane knows that that Superman can fly. Okay? That statement is a true statement. I think no one's going to disagree there. The opaque context is created in premise 3 because the truth value is harmed. It doesn't carry over salva veritate, as we agree. Now, the reason why you said it doesn't carry over is because she is not aware that Superman and Clark Kent is the same person. But that wouldn't matter because premise 2 would still be true regardless if Lois Lane knew that information. The actual debate here is not on whether Lois Lane knows those things, but on whether the truth that Superman is Clark Kent. Right. So that means that the truth value itself is what we're talking about here, not on whether Lois Lane bears in some reference to the truth value itself.
Now here
the only time she bears in reference, I'm just going to continue. Look, a pause in a sentence doesn't mean I'm done.
Excuse me?
A pause in a sentence doesn't mean I'm done.
That's you're not done? Okay. Go ahead.
I finished my statement, right? I think we'll all agree that the actual notion that we're talking about is the identity of Superman and Clark Kent. That would still carry over regardless if Lois Lane knows that or not. That's what you need to contend with. So you need to argue that in order for this statement to lead to its false conclusion, you need to argue that Lois Lane has to know premise 2.
Okay. What was my objection I was trying to make?
The objection?
No, just say it. Just say it.
No, we're clarifying the statement.
Just say it.
No. What was my objection? Listen. What's your name?
I'm so Sig.
Sid.
Yes, Sig. S-I-I-I-G.
S-I-I-G.
Anyways, so I had to do.
Georgina doesn't know.
Georgina?
Yeah, seriously, that's the same example.
With what?
That's not the same example.
Yeah.
But Georgina doesn't know.
Georgina doesn't know what?
So, but it's still the same thing.
Wait, Georgina doesn't know what?
We're talking about real life.
Yeah, I know. Georgina doesn't know what?
That he's a footballer.
Georgina knows that Cristiano plays football.
If she doesn't know, does it change that he's a footballer?
You're saying that you're talking about a situation in reality, right? And the point is actually very true. It wouldn't matter whether she knew or not, but the truth value would still be harmed in premise 3 because knowledge is part of that truth value.
Sig, are you finished?
Yeah, I'm done.
Good. All you're trying to understand from this, or explain to us Muslims, is Jesus is God, God the Father, and God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit.
We're talking about transitivity.
Wait.
Yeah, continue,
Let's go back now.
Go back to
go back to the examples I gave you about 2 in 1 and 3 in 1.
Wait, hold on. Wait, that's fine. Okay.
And listen.
I think it's fair that he should be able
1 in 1, 1 in 1 and 3 in 1,
But the only thing I would like is that he doesn't bring up transitivity again.
We didn't even get to identity,
we just
which is the point.
Identity.
We addressed identity with transitivity.
No.
We just addressed it.
I just asked you a question. I didn't get to say what I think identity is.
Then say what you think.
Everything from one thing is true is also true of thing B. You have thing A and thing B. Now you can't say that everything that is true for the Father is all true for
sorry, continue.
Because I thought you were going to say everything that is true of the Father. No, I thought you
what he did.
Mate, you said to not interrupt, right?
Yeah, so
all we're saying is that when you're saying identity, everything that's true of A also has to be true of B for them to be identical.
Except A
it has to go That's classical identity. So the point is, you can't, everything that you say...
Wait, that's not classic identity. No. That's Leibniz's law. That's not classic identity. That's Leibniz's law.
Whoa! Leibniz's law of classical identity.
So Leibniz's law explicates that it's not identical to classic identity. Classic identity is for all of A equals A. Leibniz's law is going to talk about something different.
My friend, listen.
You just mixed two logical laws together.
No, I did not.
You just mixed them two together. One implies the other. We agree. But they're not the same thing. The law of identity is for all of A.
You know what? For somebody who is talking about, you know...
Yeah.
Okay.
It's fine. You can
So all I said to you was everything that's true of the Father is not also true of the Son.
Okay, is that the law of identity or is that Leibniz's law?
It's Leibniz's law.
Okay, so you accept that that's not the law of identity then?
No problem, misslip.
Right,
That's fine. But it's part and parcel.
Fantastic.
Part and parcel. So it's okay.
I
We
said
don't
that
need to
it's
sit
part and
on
parcel, I told
semantics,
you,
yeah? You don't need to sit on semantics. Point is, everything that's true...
Semantics is one of the studies of truth,
Everything that's true of the Father is not true of the Son. That was my objection. Simple.
Yeah, that's fine.
Go on.
But that's okay if an opaque context is created, which is why transitivity doesn't carry
My next question to you now. Is the Father...
Wait.
I'm going to answer your question. Remember we're talking about
that's
2
the
and
reason
3?
why you're not speaking anymore.
Is the Father...
Because you don't know what the opaque context is.
Is the
To
Father
him. You and I are speaking.
identical to the Son in every way?
That's fine, no problem. We can go over
The
there.
Father is not identical to the Son, but is identical to the same essence as the Son. This is because
they are not
one, we can
identical.
apply an opaque context to the laws of transitivity, and there are actually examples in reality where transitive law doesn't apply. For example, St. Thomas Aquinas brings up from Aristotle this example. See that bottle over there? Motion has two formal aspects, passion and action. Passion is something being moved by another, and action is me moving something.
So action and passion.
The same motion can be, the action and passion can be identical to the same motion whilst being formally distinct. For example, if you pick that bottle up over there off the ground, the passion of the bottle being picked up is identical to the same motion as the action of it being picked up, yet there's a formal distinction there. So we even have in reality times when transitive law does not carry over.
Because opaque contexts are created.
According to what you've just said, the Father in some way is not identical to the Son. That's your belief.
They have distinct relations, subsistent relations.
That's what I asked.
They're distinct underlying reality.
The Father is not identical to the Son in some ways.
You don't need to use a relativized sense. We're just saying that the person of the Father is like the person of the Son.
Does the Father know that He's the Son?
Wait. Oh my God.
Oh my goodness.
They did it.
They're doing the Mexicals.
They did it. Oh my God. Yes. Okay. Great. This is fantastic. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Does he know?
obviously, right. So you understand what indexicality is, right?
I'm asking you the same question.
Yeah, it's fine.
Does the Father know He's the Son?
I have a completely different view of knowledge than you. I have a completely different view of knowledge.
Tell me what you believe.
I don't believe knowledge is truth propositions necessarily.
What does it mean?
So, for example, right, and I'm going to give you an example. Let's just apply it to God in general.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to see what you're going to say about this so that we can conversate, right? So, do you hold to, when you talk about God's knowledge, that God just has knowledge of every true proposition?
Ask me what is knowledge first.
Fine. I would say that knowledge would be simply the action of the intellect. Now, I will define what knowledge would be.
Explain action of the intellect of God.
Exactly.
So when you talk about God's knowledge...
Wait.
Explain.
That's a question, man. It's all right. You're doing well. Listen. So
I'm asking you to clarify.
Hey, you're doing well.
Is it difficult?
Absolutely, yes. It's so difficult. Yes.
So if someone wants to clarify a question so they don't waffle, it's not difficult.
Hey.
It's focusing.
I said it's so difficult that it's now somehow easy. So I'm going to finish.
Go ahead.
If he's okay with that. So, when it comes to what I'm saying, right, knowledge or intellect is simply to possess the form of a thing without becoming the form itself. That's what I believe, because I'm a hylomorphist. Now, I'm sure
I don't know what that means.
You don't know what hylomorphism is?
No.
Right. So, how familiar are you with like Aristotle's form-matter composition?
No.
Are you familiar with it at all? I'm just asking.
Simply.
You're not 5 though.
Simply.
You're not 5. So you inspire 5 years old? Nice. So you're 5 years old from now on. It's alright. So I don't speak to
you don't need to tell me.
That's kind of fair.
Sig.
Yeah, what's up?
Sig.
I'm right here. Let's go. You're doing well.
Knowledge of God.
Yeah.
Tell me what that means.
Yeah, it would just be to possess the form of different things in reality without becoming those forms themselves.
Possess what?
To possess the forms. So
what does it mean, possess the forms?
Yeah. So the form would be the individuation of certain matter. So
what does it mean, individuation?
Individuation.
Yeah. You're using all these jargons, and I'm sure. Even do you understand what that means?
Do you want me to tell you what individuation is? Right.
This is what they do. They just throw things around. can't.
That's okay. You did the same
It's okay, it's
thing.
okay.
You did,
Right, go ahead.
You did basket analogies. I thought you were comparing it to maths. So, when you talk about individuation, it's going to be just simply a distinction in some way. So a lack of identity to some degree that allows for the matter to be particularized. So now you have a particular instantiation of matter, as Aristotle says, as Alexander Aphrodisias says as well, if you know that. So you say something? No, you just. I thought you were going to say something because you opened your mouth. It's fine.
I'm speaking.
Yeah, I know.
It's okay, it's alright. Brother. It's okay.
Relax.
I mean, I understand I'm very annoying, but come on.
Say, carry on.
Yeah, it's alright, man. So, as I was saying, right, when it comes to knowledge, now I've basically given you like a basic definition. I can now return.
No, you haven't. You're explaining the
gave you a basic definition.
knowledge of God is to have understanding of forms. Forms is about individuation.
I didn't say that. I didn't say understanding of forms. You're using that.
It's possessing the
It's
form without
possessing the
becoming
form of
it.
it.
Possessing the forms.
I'll give you an
Forms
example.
is about individuations, right?
So
Particularization.
particularization specifically of matter, but I can give you an example to see how we use form possession. If you don't mind, could I use a water bottle? You
can't, but you can point to it.
Yeah, it's fine. Just like lift it up so that I like my phone.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So when you look at this bottle.
Not me, God's knowledge. So tell me, does God have knowledge about this?
Okay, if
He's
we
giving you
can't
an
solve
example.
knowledge for people, how would you get to knowledge for God?
Now you understand, Sig, when I was explaining about human beings and so on, and you went directly into God, that's why the analogy we asked you about 1, 2,
When did I
Trinity,
go directly into God?
your friend did.
Okay, your friend did. Not me though. Not me.
Your
but
friend.
him. Great,
Not
great,
you.
great.
Absolutely
Not
right.
me, not me.
Your
Okay,
friend.
that's
So
me.
next time,
Well, who are you talking to?
tell him next time.
You're talking to me.
Yeah, exactly.
You're talking to me.
So he's irrelevant.
Right.
He's irrelevant.
So
I agree.
talk to me.
Carry on.
He's not irrelevant. You're just not
No,
talking to me.
he's irrelevant. He's irrelevant to me. Carry on. So now,
So
the
when
knowledge.
it comes to knowledge,
Knowledge, yeah.
we need to have a correct theory of knowledge on a temporal level so that we can go to an atemporal level. So when I asked you specifically for knowledge,
No, you explain.
in
Don't
itself-
ask. Explain.
No, you're saying does the Father know the same thing as the Son? Right. So that means you have an understanding of what knowledge is.
I do.
So what does knowledge mean?
Because when I asked you that question,
What does
you
knowledge
said,
mean, though? Yeah, it's fine.
wait,
Yeah, just
Sig,
define what knowledge is. Give me a second.
Sig,
Yeah, go on.
relax.
I'm very relaxed. I'm just fixing my mask.
Yeah.
Yeah, go on.
So you said I have a different understanding of knowledge. Didn't
Yes,
you say that?
absolutely, yeah.
Good. So we need to understand what you mean by knowledge, because everyone else seems to have a general understanding of knowledge is. Do you need to go and understand all of that jargon to know what knowledge is?
Not really.
Technically, if you
But
want to
you-
have like a good understanding,
but
again.
so wait.
You are asking the question.
So
what does knowledge mean?
Because you have a particularized understanding of what knowledge is. So tell me now, when God has knowledge of things, what do you mean by that?
It wouldn't actually be on me to prove that. It would be on you to define your own term.
No, you have a
Because
different.
you're asking the question.
Sig,
Because you're asking
you
the question.
said you have a different understanding of knowledge.
Yes, absolutely. However,
in your different understanding of knowledge.
However, your
I'm
question,
speaking now, Sig.
your
Sig, I'm
question
speaking.
is reliant on the
Sig,
fact that
I'm
you
speaking.
have an understanding of
Sig,
knowledge.
I'm speaking.
So now I'm very calm.
I'm
so now
speaking.
I'm asking the
I'm not
question,
finished.
What does knowledge mean?
I'm not finished.
I'm just asking what knowledge
I'm
means.
not finished.
Absolutely, but just answer that question when you
I am
can.
not finished.
It's fine.
I'm not finished.
Oh, so you're going to finish and say what knowledge means?
So now look
You're going
at
to say
you.
what knowledge means.
Look
right?
at you, Sig.
I'm very looked. Thank you. What does knowledge mean?
Sig.
Come on, Mansour. What does knowledge mean?
When you want to speak,
Yeah.
do you expect me to listen?
Speak is called. Let's just get.
Hold on.
Say your point.
When I speak, I expect you to listen to the degree of whether there are points of
Good.
information.
So
that
when
need to
I'm
be clarified.
speaking, I
And
expect you to
just proved my
listen.
point again. So
Stop being
thanks for
a dick.
interrupting
Say
me,
your
even though
point.
you were complaining. I'm asking you now. What does knowledge mean?
Sig.
Just answer that question.
Sig.
We're all waiting for it.
I'm simply. I'm simply asking
Yeah. What does knowledge mean?
knowledge.
Yep.
Okay. My understanding of knowledge would be like, let me give you a basic understanding of knowledge.
Yeah,
To
go
be
on.
aware of things.
To be aware. What is awareness?
To have knowledge of. Now you're going to say it's a tautological?
I'm gonna say that it's circular. You're gonna have to prove that it's a
Right. No. So if I now say awareness means having something, and you're going to say what does something means, right?
No, I'll just say it. Sure. So can we apply it in
So
universal level?
what is knowledge? Do you have a?
So you said knowledge is awareness.
No.
Okay,
No.
You can run with that. It's
Wait.
fine.
Do you want a definition of knowledge? I'll give you one.
So,
I'll
so
give you
you're
one.
going to use
No.
a colloquial definition of knowledge in a theological discussion.
No.
No, let him do it. Let him use it.
Knowledge of
Yeah.
talking particulars.
Sig.
What's up, man? So what's up?
Are you listening?
Absolutely. I'm actually
Good.
just fixing my clothes.
So, you can do that. No problem.
Absolutely, that's great, and I'm glad you agree. So you use
Sage,
the term
I'm
of knowledge
speaking.
as awareness.
I'm speaking.
It's actually my turn. So
I'm
when it comes to
speaking.
this, I know.
You asked me a question.
In my turn.
You asked me a question.
And you answered.
I'm answering.
Which was, no, you answered. You said.
What did I answer?
You said that knowledge is to be aware of things.
Okay.
Absolutely. So
Do you disagree?
Pardon?
Do you disagree?
We're going to see if it entails certain
No,
things.
do you disagree?
Not yet. We're going to see if it entails.
No, hang on. Do you disagree?
I don't disagree with the definition until there are certain entailments of that definition.
Fine. So now, wait.
Hold on. We need to explore the entailments.
Coming back to the question again.
So now you're talking to him. Thank you so much.
No, the question I asked you.
The entailment. Oh wait, Mansour, you can
does
say
the
my name.
father know?
Right, cool.
Does the father know his son?
So when it comes to knowledge, okay, we can just use this. Let's say that there is a unipersonal deity. Let's assume that for the case to see whether your definition
What does it mean, unipersonal deity?
A deity that is only one underlying reality. There you go.
What does it mean, one underlying deity?
We can say an individuation, one individuation.
Okay, so one deity means one individuation of that deity.
I said one unipersonal deity because there are theories that say that there is one deity that is multi-personal. For example, the Trinitarians. And for example, when you say that there are multiple distinct...
So you're now saying one...
Wait. He does say that.
He says that.
He says that.
What do I say?
You say that there are real, distinct, uncreated, eternal attributes.
Wait. What do I say about what?
You say that about your God, there are real, distinct, uncreated, eternal attributes. Do you say this?
Yeah, I do. In one sense, I do. I'll tell you what I mean by that.
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
The attributes don't subsist by themselves.
They don't subsist.
They're always in relation to what we say, the creator God.
Okay.
God is described by his attributes. Because God is eternal with no beginning, his attributes are also eternal description of...
Are those attributes Allah?
Wait.
No, they're not.
You know what? I apologize.
They're not concrete particulars.
Pardon?
They're not concrete particulars.
Concrete particulars. So they're abstracted.
So they're abstracted.
Yeah.
In other words, for instance, when we say that God has attributes, we don't say that these attributes exist distinct from
That's
themselves.
not an example, that's the claim. Remember that, right?
That is what we believe.
That's the claim. Exactly. That's the claim. That's not. You said for example. So that's not an example. That's a claim.
No. Okay. But I'm clarifying the example. I'm clarifying
the claim. You're clarifying the claim, not the example.
Is it okay for me to clarify the claim with an example? Is that okay?
Oh yeah. Give another example. That's not the claim.
Well, the claim
That's
is
how you
what?
give examples.
The claim is what?
The claim is that they are not concrete particulars.
They're not concrete particulars. So the example here is, in order to give something more concrete, if you will, that God's knowledge, for instance, isn't something that exists distinct from himself. It is a sine qua non of God. But it is
sorry, what? So say the word again.
A sine qua non. I mean,
sine qua non.
A sine qua non.
I don't know exactly what that means.
You should do because you.
I actually don't.
You were
using all this jargon.
I'm not knowledgeable in any sense.
Now he doesn't know that.
It doesn't
the most
matter.
basic philosophical.
Probably it is. In what school? In what school?
In any school.
In any school,
yeah,
right?
Because sine qua non
Okay, so
means
show
it
me
is
in the Aristotelian school
it
where
is
it
an
says it.
essential part of that being.
Oh, sine qua non. Oh, sorry.
Sine qua non.
Yeah.
Yes.
My bad. I apologize. Sorry.
No worries.
My Latin's very.
You're making me look old here. You know what I mean?
And you're making me look like a child here.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
It's crazy. I'm trying to say.
We're going to find a balance here.
Yeah,
Fine.
we're gonna find a
balance.
balance. Just give me like 20 years of age and we're good.
No. My age is too precious.
Come on.
That wisdom comes with that as well.
Right.
Okay. As well as humility, right?
But putting aside the banter, let's carry on. So look, when we talk about God's attributes, we don't say that God attributes exist distinct from himself. Because I know some Christians and some other people tend to make that claim that when we Muslims say that God has 99 attributes, that there are somehow 99 gods. We don't say that, do we?
Christians would understand that way.
But you say they're distinct from each other, though, right?
It's very important.
Distinct from each other in an abstract way, not in a concrete way. So in other words,
what does it mean?
It's okay, for instance, for us to understand that knowledge is not the same as wisdom.
In God.
Wisdom,
all right.
in God.
But in God, are those two things identical?
They're not identical.
So then in the reality, so this is important, right? When you mention abstractor, you are just talking about a purely logical or mental distinction in the mind.
Yes.
On the part of the reasoning, of course, right? But abstractor would not be applied here, would not be applicable here, if the distinction also exists in reality.
What do you mean by reality?
That which is, wait, what? You don't know, what do I mean by reality?
What do you mean by reality?
I'm
talking about reality here.
I mean, reality,
we're talking about God who exists in reality, right?
that which really exists.
Yeah,
But the problem is this, though.
So there can't be anything more...
You say that they're abstractor, though. Hold on, I'm still speaking, it's fine.
No, I'm trying to clarify what you mean by reality.
By real.
So reality, there can't be anything more real than God, right?
By real, you could just say...
Can there be anything more real than God?
Pardon?
Can there be anything more real than God?
Because God exists itself.
Exactly. So when we talk about God...
Well, you don't believe
the reality of God...
Why are you interrupting? Let him finish.
He interrupted him already.
No.
He's making a point, though.
He made an accusation that I'm here to defend.
Right, and the accusation would be that.
But the point is, though,
that the reality of God is the greatest reality. Anything other than that is essentially...
not as good. Huh? Not as good.
Not as good.
Not as real.
It's subordinate to. That's the word I'm saying. It's subordinate to.
It participates in.
Yeah, you could say it participates in the conceptual sense, right? Not in a concrete sense.
No, but again, what do you mean by concrete?
So when we say when we
what do you mean by concrete?
So when we go back to the attributes of God, when I say that
I need you to define the term concrete. Like, what does that mean?
Concrete is something that's this is a concrete thing.
That's an example.
This is an
That's
example of a concrete particular.
Give a definition.
You're a concrete particular.
What's concrete?
You're a concrete particular.
Great,
You're
great.
not him, and you're not him.
We all agree with
I'm
these
not
things
Mansoor.
that apparently you are saying those words. What does concrete mean?
Concrete is something that exists outside of the mind. It has an existence
Like
in and of itself.
ontologically positive.
It has an existence outside of the mind in and of itself. It exists in and of itself. In other words, it isn't something that exists merely in the mind.
Okay,
so when we
so
speak
then
about,
would
so
God
if you allow me
be
to
a
finish,
concrete particular?
I'm going there. That's exactly where I'm going. So when we talk about God, we talk about God as something. When we talk about God's attributes, because that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
When we talk about God's attributes, we are talking about God's attributes not as something that exists distinct from Himself. Like, for instance, you exist distinct from me, even though you're a human.
That's just a real distinction.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it. Real distinction.
No, that's a major real distinction. So,
That's
for
fine.
example,
Yeah, I know it's
the
real.
bottle
I know
is
it's real. You're real.
No.
Look, you broke me, I'm
You're
real.
misunderstanding what I mean by major real distinction. It's fine. There's just certain scholastic terms that I just have to clarify for the conversation.
Clarify for yourself?
For the conversation. Because I know
Because
the
I don't need any
term.
clarification. Right?
Right, so you know what a real distinction is.
Well, real
That's why I'm
distinction.
trying to help you. I'm trying to define it for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, go on.
Thank you.
Go on.
I appreciate it. Look,
Go.
so a real distinction is what you're describing, a distinction between two concrete particulars such that one is not a part of the other. So, for example, me and this guy.
I agree with that.
Right.
That's what I said.
But then you
I
have
said you're not
real,
him and he's not you.
Right, but that's
much more simpler
part
than
of
just.
that's part of a real distinction. But there's other distinctions. For example, real nominal distinctions. So you have nominal distinctions, which are distinctions between two distinct concepts in the mind. There is a real distinction between those two things, although the reality of it exists in the mind. You said God. You didn't say, but you're going to conclude that God is a real concrete particular.
No, I'm not going to.
Because a concrete existence, a concrete thing is something that exists outside of the mind.
Not in the same. Okay, but look, in order to say that something concrete exists outside the mind, you got to firstly have to say that there is a mind that exists like an overarching idea. In order
Not
to say
really.
that, well, you do, because look,
Not really.
if God is the greatest reality,
I'm not sure. I'm not see how that entails.
well,
just
well,
walk through that with me.
I'll try and explain how it entails.
Yeah,
maybe
absolutely.
if I'm wrong, you can explain to me where I'm wrong.
You're probably going to be right.
So no, I don't know.
You don't know?
I mean,
Exactly.
let's see where it goes. Right? If you allow me a few seconds to actually put my point
go on.
across, right? So look, if you're saying that a concrete thing exists apart from the mind, and God is a concrete particular, right? There has to be a mind other than God in order for him to exist apart from that. But there isn't, because God is the greatest reality.
Well, that's actually something that I would disagree with. So when you say that there needs to be a mind to conceive of the existence of this concrete particular,
Look, I've already given you that mind. The mind or the knowledge is God.
You're saying
so
in
God,
order,
you can't go beyond God. That's
wait,
what I'm
hold on.
saying.
Let me just clarify this, right? So let's walk through this step by step. A concrete particular for you is something that exists outside of the mind. So, could you actually clarify for us so that I make sure
that's fine.
Right, exactly. Here's the thing, though.
And the
You
mind-
gave a criteria for something to be a concrete particular. That is that there has to be a mind that observes or is cognizant of this concrete particular.
Excellent.
I disagree with that premise. You
Okay,
can prove
okay,
that.
that's fine. But let me just add to that now.
You can't add to it. You got to prove it first.
No. Well, the greatest mind is God. So in other words, there is no existence that exists other than God. So therefore, He is the mind.
Does
if
there
you will.
need to be a distinct
I don't
mind?
personally use, just to clarify, I don't use the word mind because that's not part of
because
our
this isn't
religion.
because this
what we would
isn't
say is the
Neoplatonic.
knowledge of God. But let's just, for the sake of argumentation, carry on with the use of the word mind.
But that's a
in order to make
Neoplatonic.
things easy for you. So
It's
God
fine,
is
but
the greatest mind. He's
I don't
the
think it's
greatest
used. You can say
reality.
intellect, but the problem is
If you allow me to finish, right?
it's fine, but you haven't proven the statement though. That's the problem.
Well, no, I don't need to.
Of course you do, unless you're assuming it under your
I've given
schema.
you the a priori understanding that God is the greatest being. In other words, there is the eternal being. There is nothing other than Him. Everything comes from Him.
But
so
how
he
does that
is the
prove?
mind?
So how does that
He can't be the concrete particular.
So how does that prove that a mind needs to exist for the concrete particular to exist? That's not a proof for that argument. You need to prove that premise.
No.
Yes, so do it.
Okay, I'm trying to.
Absolutely.
So the concrete particular is something that exists. It is a contingent thing. God is not a contingent thing, is He?
Okay, so then you can just reduce concrete particulars to just contingent things. Now, usually in philosophy, when we say absolutely.
Well, contingent things don't.
You're saying
things are not abstract.
You're saying contingent things are
do not
concrete.
include
Just
abstract.
let me finish. You're saying that contingent things are concrete. In order for something to be concrete, it has to be contingent. You cannot have a concrete thing without it being contingent. That's what you're saying. Now, here's the problem. You haven't given a reason outside of an ad hoc definition, which we can just run with. But I don't need to do that. I'm talking about the real existence of attributes.
I think I already have. I've told you that there is an eternal being.
Yeah, you're being dogmatic. You're not actually proving the point.
A priori.
Okay, but but
That's not a priori. It's not.
Do you believe the greatest being
is a priori?
is a priori?
I don't use perfect being theology.
Sorry?
I don't use perfect being theology.
Oh, so now you conveniently use a particular theology to circumvent
seems like
discussion.
Which theology did I use?
You just said that.
I said I don't. I said I don't.
That's what I'm saying.
So which one do I use?
I'm saying you use a particular set of theology or philosophy to circumvent when you see a problem.
Okay, so which one do I use?
Which one should you not use?
No, which one do I use? Which one do I use?
Okay, which one should we use both together?
You're just switching the question on.
No.
So which one do I use?
No. Which one should we both
Answer the
use?
question.
Both
Which one do I use?
Which one should both use?
Which one do I use?
Very confusing.
Right, which one do I use? I know it's confusing, but he's making claims that you can't prove.
Can I ask a question which might undercut the confusion here?
Maybe,
possibly, right?
Possibly, right.
What's your concept? What's your conception of God?
What's my conception of God? That's just shifting the claim. That's just shifting the claim back to me. We're talking about
my friend. I'm trying to just undercut everything.
Yeah, you're undercutting everything.
Correct me if I'm
which
wrong.
I am. So
Okay, go on,
what's going on is you are trying to shift the claim onto me to talk about my conception of God.
No, because I'm confused.
When the conversation is talking about your conception of God.
Yeah, I've already given you my conception of God.
Your conception of
God.
God.
There is an eternal being.
Great.
Everything is contingent upon God.
That's fine.
Including concrete particulars as well as abstract.
Now this is the important part now.
No,
right?
well, can I finish my concept?
Yeah, it's fine. I'm going to come to that point though.
You mentioned that an abstract. You mentioned that a concrete can't exist apart from a mind, and you said if God is a concrete particular, there has to be a mind.
I said what? Sorry,
if God is a concrete particular. You said this. Did you not say that?
I'm saying that that's what you're saying.
And hence the reason I'm using a conditional statement. That you said that if God is a concrete particular, you said to me, God can only be a concrete particular if there is a mind from which he is perceived from or instantiated
Your
from.
argument is that God is that divine mind, so there's no problem. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
But here's the issue. That's not proving that anything that needs to exist needs a mind to conceive of it. That's the proposition. So just to break it down even more, your statement that God is the divine mind and thus he does not need other minds to conceive of him presupposes that in order for something to exist, the condition for an existence is that there is a mind that perceives of it.
Yeah, but that would only be true of universalism. I'm a hardcore nominalist, so I don't believe. Yes, I'm a complete nominalist.
That's fine.
So I don't believe.
Universalism wouldn't even
if you allow me to finish, right?
Yeah, go on.
I don't believe that the mind exists apart from God. Do you understand that?
So that the mind isn't really distinct from God.
A mind is an attribute. The mind is, like I said before, it is what we would use in Islam is knowledge of God.
Let's say,
so it's an attribute.
I think we're getting so you're getting hung up on on what it means to be concrete.
I need to be hung up on this because
I know, but you're using
so that you appreciate before you move on.
But when people
what our
use the
concept
term,
is,
I know,
so that you don't misrepresent us.
I haven't misrepresented you. So when it comes to
maybe
exactly,
you might do.
Exactly, I might, but as of now I have not.
No, but I think you already have because you said
you
that.
just said that I might.
Because you said that God. You said that God exists as a concrete particular. The only way it can exist as a concrete particular is if there is a mind that exists.
And that's what I'm saying.
Apart from God.
To prove that definition.
Allow me to finish, my friend. So I said to you that argument is invalid because God is the mind, and there is no mind other than God. You said, in order for God to be a mind, you have to firstly concede that a mind exists apart from that.
That's only if there is a premise that follows.
I said to you that God, the mind, is the knowledge of God. Okay, so God is essentially the mind, and the mind is God.
Okay, so your predicate nominalism is leading you to accept a definition that you are not proving. You are taking a definition that in order for a concrete thing to exist, it needs to be conceived by a mind. Wait, hold on. Can you prove that in order for me, for example,
if a being is eternal,
is there a possible?
I'll try and prove it. In every possible world, there is a being that exists eternally. That being we call Allah. Yeah. That being is eternal. In other words, it has never had a beginning. It will never have an end.
That's fine.
So therefore, I think it's reasonable to say that this concept is a priori, meaning it's intuitively known.
No, the concept of what?
The concept of a being that has no beginning and no end.
That's not what we're talking about. We are talking about the definition of concrete things existing. That's why you need to clarify a definition. So let's look at the actual argument that you're making.
I think I've clarified it.
No, okay. If I asked him what your definition was, he wouldn't understand. I know.
I don't need for you to ask him. Just ask me.
I know, which is why I'm doing. So when it comes to
are you explaining? Are you trying to second guess what I'm going to say or what I said before?
I haven't second guessed anything yet. So, like I was going to say,
What are you doing at the moment?
explaining something.
What are you explaining exactly?
The fact that you haven't proven a certain definition or a certain implication.
Okay, and I'm hoping you're going to go back to...
One second. Proving certain definition. Since when you start proving definitions?
Pardon? No, I said an implication.
Okay, so...
Implication.
Yeah.
Okay, six. I'm hoping you're going to do this by going back to what I've said to you.
Concrete existences.
Concrete existences in relation to God's knowledge and God existing as an eternal being. I want you to show me the flaw in the logic that if concrete particulars cannot exist apart from God's knowledge and God's knowledge is eternal.
You're saying without a mind in general.
Please let me finish. No, not mind in general. I've already told you that the mind in general is God's knowledge.
Right.
That is a generality here.
Wait, sorry, generality, you're just talking about that in all cases. That doesn't mean that like...
God's knowledge is a synonym for God's mind if it makes things easy for you.
That's not going to help. Seriously.
Well, I need...
And the reason it's not going to help is because... If I may finish,
No, I haven't really clarified.
You're asking me to clarify something and I'm going to have to do it.
But no, I haven't asked you to clarify something. I want you to clarify exactly what I'm going to say to you next.
So you want me just to repeat back?
I want you to tell me how it is that you're asking me for evidence for something I've already told you is a priori.
I'm going to tell you what I'm actually saying.
I've asked...
What's a priori is that God, by definition, can be eternal. No one's disagreeing there. But the point that I'm making is that when you use the term...
So therefore his knowledge is eternal.
Is his knowledge eternal?
Using the term concrete...
Is his knowledge eternal?
Hold on. I'm going to finish the statement that I'm saying.
Okay, but do answer that
don't play
question.
around here.
No, answer the way you want.
His knowledge
Yes, because it's identical to God.
Thank you very much.
Yes, because it's identical to God. So now,
thank you very much.
I'm going to finish now. When it comes to existences themselves, right? Thank you. So when it comes to concrete existences, right? I haven't seen any school of thought, even in predicate nominalism, that uses
knowledge of absence is not absence of knowledge, my friend. Just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
No.
Maybe it's a case that
I never said that. I never said that. I never made that point. Hold on. I never made that point. I'm saying something very specific. I'm asking you to bring forward a thinker that defines concrete and abstract in such a way. Ibn Taymiyyah. Okay, so Ibn Taymiyyah.
If you go to a book by Hoover, if you go to a book by Anja, if you go to a certain number of books,
that's fine. I've accepted that you believe. You're saying that Ibn Taymiyyah claims it. Now, if I may continue, because you've given the definition now. Now, you're using Ibn Taymiyyah's understanding of concrete objects, right? When I'm using the term concrete, I'm just talking about real existences. I'm not talking about specifically religions that are by mind.
You asked me about the concept of God that I have.
Because that's a Neoplatonic argument. That's a Neoplatonic argument.
I don't care about Platonism. I don't care about...
It's a Neoplatonic argument. The Neoplatonists said the same thing when it comes to knowledge. That truth and knowledge, not just knowledge, but specifically things that exist. Things that exist.
Okay, fine.
Wonderful. Let me finish. That things that exist.
Wonderful. You know your stuff.
That's great.
Get back to the conversation.
The conversation is this: that the attributes that you believe in really do exist, and these real existences are not the same as the existence of Allah. They're not identical in existence. Do you believe this?
They're not different.
Let's clarify one thing.
Yeah, there is a lack of identity between Allah and
do you just as a way of comparison?
Lack of identity.
In your concept of God, does he have attributes?
Find that. What do you mean by lack of identity?
By lack of identity, I'm using a negation of the law of identity. So where we have A equal, or for all of A equals A.
Well, I'm not going to go there.
Then
I'm not going to go there. Let's just keep things nice and simple.
We need to go there.
Let's keep things nice.
We're going there.
You can go there as much as you want to, but I'm going to stick to those things that are simple, so that people can benefit. Because
I think there are many
people aren't stupid. People recognize that when a person says to you,
I think people are more capable beyond measure. But I'm going to finish. So
really,
when you
think that people in general will be able to understand the jargon that you come up with?
What? For all of this thing is identical to this thing. That's not hard. A equals A is not a hard concept.
Okay, so let's go back
until you talk about opaque concepts.
Can we apply this now to the identities of God's knowledge and its relationship to God? Can you just at least do me that favor?
So
it progresses the conversation.
That's what I was trying to get to, but I need to clarify how identity works, as Mansour and I don't know what the other white guy meant, but it's fine. So when it comes to identity, you have this thing, let's call it P, okay? P, which is Allah, because we don't really care about like the letters here.
P is Allah. Right?
Let P resemble Allah. Let P be Allah.
Yep.
Not in a blasphemous sense, I don't really care. That's fine. So let P resemble Allah, right? Now, let Q represent Allah's knowledge. Now what you're saying is P if and only if Q. Or rather, in mathematical terms, P is Q. That's what you're saying.
P is Q, okay?
P is Q.
Yep.
Now, under identity, every single thing that P has, Q would have it also, as you would say?
No, because God
under classical identity?
No, because God is more expansive than just merely his knowledge.
Okay, that's important, right? So then they're not identical. That's the point.
Okay, when you say identical,
I just clarified it.
When we we say God's knowledge is...
Sorry, give me a second, sorry. Like, I have like these pins and needles in my
Dude, I was suffering from a cramp, so you're not the only one.
Brother, if we had a
That's why I was moving my leg up and down.
Honestly, man. It's okay, though. Continue. I'm listening to everything. Just ignore the leg.
Man, you get cramps.
I get cramps because I play football and basketball at the same time, bro.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Jump up and down a little bit.
I still cross them up though.
Do you?
Don't break your ankle.
Without breaking my back, yeah?
Fix your ankle here, let me tell you.
That's Cristiano Ronaldo right there.
Okay, so
Yeah, as you were saying.
identity. So we're talking about God's knowledge. So God has attributes, which
Your
are...
claim is, let's clarify what you're trying to say.
Yeah, so God has attributes.
Cool.
99 attributes that we know of.
99?
And there's more than that.
Maybe.
Some of which we don't know of. God hasn't informed us of.
And I'm saying that these are...
And so these attributes are, if you will, descriptions. Let's just make things simple. They're descriptions of God.
Okay.
Knowledge is not the same as wisdom. But all of these...
Oh, I get the analogy that you're trying to get. By the way, I know all of this.
I know, well...
But I get what you're trying to say.
Okay, so how would you translate that over into your jargon?
Yeah, right.
Just so that we have a...
Brother?
Sorry to interrupt.
No worries, mate, no worries.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in my jargon, right, I'm just trying to break this down as much as I can. You're saying that these attributes...
You're educating us here.
Nah, not really. Because you already know this. So when it comes to attributes, you are saying that these attributes are merely just descriptions. Obviously, in a certain field of philosophy known as semantics or semiotics, you will have a statement that will point to a certain sign. So for example, what's your name? Hamza. So the term Hamza is a description of Hamza, as you would say. But that actually signifies something in reality, namely Hamza. Now when I say the term knowledge, right, that term will also be a description. But that description signifies something in reality, namely Allah's knowledge.
Yeah.
Right. So Allah's knowledge does actually exist. That's the claim. Now, Allah's knowledge, as you agreed to, would not be identical to Allah.
Yeah,
Right. Exactly, can't be. Now, that's the problem that I have. Because then the...
What is the problem?
Yeah, there's two implications. Either the existence of knowledge, right, as a really distinct thing, and by really distinct, we mean it's not in the sense of a separation. We're not going to argue with separation. People like Ibn Taymiyyah say that the attributes are not Allah, but they're not other than Allah. So what he means by that is, and this is my reading, right?
you know your stuff, go on.
Kind of. So when it comes to, maybe, sort of. So when it comes to the attributes, my reading would say, not even my reading, but certain readings that people like Ibn Taymiyyah, because like much later, he would say that what Ibn Taymiyyah means by that is that the attributes aren't separate in the way that these two things are separate.
Exactly.
Right. However, they wouldn't be identical to Allah as apologia is identical to base thomist. So what that would mean is that they would fall under the definition of metaphysical parts, because they aren't the whole of the subject of Allah, as he would agree with. Therefore, they are metaphysically parts of Allah, which is what he said to
That's
Mansur
what I said to
before.
Mansur
How
before.
can it be
God has
parts?
composition.
Yeah, and that gets into the definition of a part. So, just I'll give my definition of a part, and then you can. So, for you first, when you say the term part, what do you mean?
I don't say these are parts of God.
No.
but
I'm
just
saying the
whenever you
definition of
use
part.
the
You know how
term
you said
part.
like the definition of one? Definition of part.
A part.
Yeah.
You can say individual components that makes up a whole.
Exactly. Now, what I would say, because I'm an idiot, I'm very dumb, when it comes
Do you
to
really mean that?
genuinely, yes.
Okay, carry
It's
on.
humble.
So when it I'm kidding.
Yeah, carry on.
So when it comes to parts, my definition would follow under what most mereologists would say, and that would be something about the subject that is not the whole of the subject. So anything that is predicated of a subject that isn't the whole of the subject in a classical sense, as you would have agreed to, the attributes would fall under this definition. Not in a physical sense, not in a temporal sense, and definitely not in a spatial sense.
But in a
Hopefully not.
metaphysical
But in a
sense.
metaphysical sense. And thus my argument that Allah has metaphysical parts would stand. So if that's the case, then the implication of anything that is composite in any way would be metaphysically finite. And of course, you would argue that Allah is metaphysically infinite.
How is a composite?
Right, as a composite.
Because he has things in him which are less than the whole
Yeah,
of
because
him.
a composite is just simply something that has parts
So would it
in any sense.
So if I were to clarify, if I would just clarify further, would it be fascinating to you if I were to tell you, and you may even know this, given that it seems like you've read Ibn Taymiyyah and you've read a little bit about Ibn Taymiyyah as well.
Probably not.
But if I were to say to you that God's knowledge is of two types. There is the knowledge that is a genus, i.e.
Yeah, knowledge that you're using like the scholastic term, right? So knowledge that is something that's contained in the genus of knowledge.
Exactly.
And then you have like particularization.
Exactly. So there's particularization of God's knowledge, which is temporal. So in other words, God knows certain.
And then you have knowledge as a genus, which is atemporal.
Genus,
by the way, that view of knowledge, that theory of knowledge, is actually a big problem. But we can get into that later.
No, but it's not atemporal in the sense that it is timeless.
Yeah, that one, right? Yeah. But atemporal just means something that isn't subject to time. As you would agree.
Well, yeah, but it could be omnitemporal, which we need to make a distinction, because some people say that if something exists outside of time, it can either be timeless or it can be omnitemporal, meaning that it can be like a type of amorphous type of time. It can't be subdivided.
Well, I would say that if something...
We would say that this isn't the case with the genus of time.
That's fine. Well, again, like the definition when you talk about like temporality, just so that we can catch you up, when it comes to like temporality or omnitemporality, he's trying to say that there are things that are outside of time, and so they just don't have any bearing or relation to time.
Yeah, they're not metricated time.
Like in their time, but they're not measured by changes. And then, exactly. But again, the clock is just like a measurement of change, right? You would agree. But then you have certain things that we would say kind of encompasses all of time. Now, I would say that wouldn't be applicable to God. Again, he might say that. We haven't seen his position on that yet. You can have your own thoughts and reservations about that.
Can we have your position at some point about what who God is for you, whether he has a name, and what how his attributes
hopefully when we agree on metaphysical composition, then yeah. So when it comes to...
Why can't you just be clear? Come on.
Because my position is irrelevant.
No, it's going to be relevant because at least it'll allow us to have some type of common ground here, that you guys believe in a God that has this kind of understanding. You've got a general idea of what our understanding of God is.
Yeah, and I'm saying that there are problems with that. So even if my position...
Just to put one thing in there.
Yeah, go on.
We as Muslims do not say the attribute of God, say for example his knowledge. His knowledge somehow speaks to his speech, or speaks to his vision, or speaks to his creative acts and so on.
The speak would speak to it.
The attributes themselves do not have own personality. Do we believe the attributes of Allah? Do you believe the attributes of Allah? They have conversation between themselves? Of course not. They're not individualized persons, right? In Christianity, when we compare the God, wait,
are they Christians? I haven't even figured that out.
They're Christians.
45 minutes.
They're Trinitarian Christians.
You're doing a what?
One second.
I don't have to answer the whataboutism. That's the point.
You're interrupting. You're interrupting.
Yeah, if you're doing something illogical, then yes.
You're interrupting.
I think even he would agree this is a whataboutism.
You're interrupting.
But you accept that it's a whataboutism, right?
You're interrupting.
It is a whataboutism.
Give us clarification.
I wasn't really listening, but anyway.
He's saying.
So what I'm saying,
you guys also in Christianity.
What I'm saying, you didn't even listen to what I have to say.
It's just a two-quote.
It's not two-quote fallacy.
Yes, it is.
Two-quote, yeah.
Do you know what I was going to say? Go ahead. What I was going to say?
Yeah, you're probably going to speak about Trinitarianism.
No, what I was going to say.
Something about Trinitarianism, which would be.
No, tell me exactly what I was going to say.
I don't need to. The point is that you're going to say.
So you don't know what I'm going to say.
You accused him of a two-coco.
What I was going to say.
And you're not even willing to question.
So in order for me to satisfy that
what
claim,
was I going to say?
He was literally in the middle of...
Yeah, so I'm saying to you now, in order for me to satisfy the claim that you're making a two-quote way, I need to show you that you are saying something about my belief, but you also, which is what you did.
What I was going to say?
Something about my belief.
Such what?
Trinitarianism.
No, about what?
You were going to say that the persons in
What is a two-quote fallacy?
A two-quote fallacy is like, say, it's a form of whataboutism when you say, but you also, it's specifically like directed to me.
Yeah. Now give me exactly what I was going to say to make it into a two-quote fallacy.
No, that's not what the criteria is for a two-quote way. I don't need to say exactly. I just need to give the actual.
So basically, without hearing what I have to say, you assume I'm committing this fallacy.
What you're going to say will probably prove it.
What I was going to say?
No, I'm saying what you were going to say will probably prove it.
You accuse me of committing.
So say the statement. And then prove the point.
You accuse, first of all, with an assumption that I'm going to commit a two-quote fallacy, right?
A two-quote way, yeah.
Yeah, two-quote. Okay.
Two-quote way.
And what I was going to say?
Yeah.
Go on, tell me what I was going to say.
In order for the two-quote way to be satisfied, you need to say anything generally about my belief.
Anything?
Yes, about my belief.
So if I say you believe in a loving God, it's a two-quote fallacy, yeah?
Yeah, in regard to the conversation, yes. It's like saying you also believe in X.
Seriously?
Yeah,
okay.
You can look at what two-quote is.
Okay. Fine.
No,
good.
It's
some.
You can search it as well.
Absurd. Anyway. What I was going to say is this.
Yeah, go on.
We don't believe the attributes of our Creator God. they somehow are individual persons and they speak to each other.
Argue for that.
Oh, listen.
Let him finish.
Okay. Listen. You believe within God, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the giving you opportunity, that you believe in God, there are these persons. And these persons are what? The Logos of God. One of the most called the Logos of God. Right? The Logos of God is not God himself.
Yeah.
Correct me. Is the Logos of God God himself, or is it distinct from God?
Well, I've got enough information now to
No,
wait.
So is the Logos of, okay, establish that. Is the Logos of God...
Yeah, so the establishment would be that you
is
say...
the Logos of God God himself?
You don't believe that they are persons, but you believe that there are persons. The Logos of God, you were going to say the Father, and then you're going to refer to the Spirit.
No.
You were not going to refer to the Holy Spirit in any sense.
This is just a two-quote question.
I was saying, that's why sometimes you need to listen.
You were going to say...
I was going to say to you,
three persons.
is the Logos of God God himself?
That's not the conversation
Wait,
at hand.
that's my question to you.
Yeah, which is part of a two-quote. You're moving the conversation
listen. If the Logos of God is the Logos of God, it's not God.
I don't have to answer the question.
We were talking about the metaphysical composition.
Clarify something.
Is the Logos on my position? Not on my position.
In your position,
I don't have to.
Okay.
Because that's not what we're debating. I'm doing an internal critique.
I'm trying to show you the difference.
Okay,
we have a difference.
Okay, so again,
I'm going to show you the difference.
We definitely have a difference, but I don't have to establish that because we've already assumed the
I'm going to affirm from you
whether you persons either.
Listen,
I never assume the attributes of persons. Ibn Taymiyyah never assumes the attributes of person. But what he does say is that they're metaphysical parts, which is why you complain about composition. That's why he's not saying anything.
In your belief, in your belief,
yeah, my belief, which is a two-quote way.
In your belief,
yes, we're not talking about my belief. We're talking about yours.
I am.
Right, you are.
I am.
By committing a fallacy. You're admitting you're committing a fallacy.
Let me finish first.
I'm not going to let you finish your fallacy. No.
How do you know I'm committing a fallacy without
because you just referred to Trinitarianism. You said the attributes of a person, but you believe that the attributes are. As you can see,
is this a one-way conversation here or something? Because it seems like you're critiquing our understanding of God, but you're not willing to speak about your
identity and the Trinity.
Because you would finish one critique and then we can move on to another.
I think we already finished.
I don't think so.
I don't think we have.
That's your opinion. You know what? I can't stand here talking to you all day. So I think there should be at least a reasonable amount of give and take. Where
we don't agree that we finished the first part of the dialogue.
Well, I think I have. I think I've given.
You think exactly? I don't.
That's fine. That's your opinion.
So then you arrive at an impasse and we can't continue.
Well, I don't think we can because I've already given you a definition of God, which I think pretty much
and also entails, metaphysical composition.
No, I don't think it does.
So how does it not entail it?
But we're not going to go there.
You're not going to go to how it doesn't entail it?
I think I've already given you enough to satisfy the argument that we have in the beginning.
No, the argument that he was making,
apart from God's
the argument that he was making actually from the entire beginning,
from that look
was
that you're giving me,
attributes existed.
That's precisely the argument that we started off with.
Precisely the argument that he was talking about. The argument that we were always talking about is that Allah is metaphysical.
I don't think you're
always what we've been talking about.
Allah is metaphysical. That was the conversation the entire time. Anyone can go back to the very first time he said anything at all, and he will say,
I was talking about metaphysical composition of Allah.
The first thing that he said, I wasn't here. I came in later on.
Exactly.
And so therefore,
he can tell you the exact same thing.
And so therefore, the fact that I came in far later, I established an argument for myself, which was the beginning of the conversation between you and I.
I
cannot speak of him because I wasn't here to listen to what he said.
Listen. What I did in the conversation is that
do you agree with that, Sig?
Yeah, you can't speak on what they're saying. But however...
So therefore, the conversation that I came in on was an argument that I brought forth to you guys.
Which would be implied by what they're saying. And that's the problem.
That's not my problem.
So when it comes... Yeah, but it is because you're engaging in the conversation.
I can't now go back and start speaking on his behalf.
That's fine.
Nor can I speak on his behalf
when you're specifically talking about abstracta and concreta, I said that I granted it for you because you just assumed Ibn Taymiyyah's nominalism. You didn't prove the nominalism, you assumed it.
Well, I think I already did, and I'll repeat it one more time for the sake of this. If I can repeat it for the umpteenth time, and this is the last time I'm going to be doing it, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, and I don't think you've answered it. You said that abstracts cannot exist apart from the mind.
That's not what I said. I said that's your position.
The conversation is on camera.
Absolutely. I didn't say that.
And you know what? I think we'll leave it to the knowledgeable crowd at home to decide whether you've answered the question that I put to you or...
Okay, no worries.
Yeah, the question on whether you believe that Allah is metaphysically composite.
Can we just clear up what we were saying at the start for the crowd?
That Allah is metaphysically composite.
What we're just saying is a part... What we're just saying... Hold on, let me just finish, bro. What we were saying at the start is a part is just something which is less than the whole of a thing. This can be metaphysical, temporal, spatial, or physical. Okay? That's just what a part is. Then the second premise was just that Allah's attributes are really distinct. And then the third premise is just that if Allah's attributes are really distinct, then they are less than the whole of Allah. They're not identical to the whole of Allah. The conclusion of those premises is that Allah's attributes are parts of Allah. And then we can go into talking about the entailments of composition within God. If you have a problem with that, just address the three premises.
Yeah, it doesn't follow, because if
But bear in mind, he did say that they cannot be identical.
They can't be identical. How
Right.
can they be
Exactly.
identical?
So the
How can the
argument-
attributes, how can knowledge be identical to...
Okay, so you agree with premise 2 that Allah's attributes are really distinct?
Right, that's the point.
So,
So whether
premise...
they're distinct or not,
They are.
so they're distinct, right?
That's what you're
So
arguing.
therefore they're not identical.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the problem here?
The problem is that if that is accepted, then there is a certain entailment of your view.
Yeah.
And what is that entailment?
That they are metaphysical parts.
And what is the problem with that?
That would mean that Allah is metaphysically composite.
No, okay. But these things do not exist as concrete particulars, so therefore God can't be composite. He is a singular being, and these are descriptions. Do you understand the difference between descriptions and concrete things?
But those descriptions actually exist.
Brother, one second.
No,
Just
but they
saying it
exist.
dogmatically
My
doesn't
friend,
mean that
they
it actually
exist.
works.
They exist in what way? They don't exist apart from God, such that God becomes composite.
Okay.
Or they
in
don't
order for
exist,
something to be
they
composite.
don't exist in a way where they are somehow a second divine being, such that God is now composite.
Okay, I'm
unless
not
you
arguing.
can,
Unless
you can, no, but
We'll just
the
establish
argument,
it, it's fine,
The argument
he's
is so
assuming
obvious.
nominalism. He's
That
assuming
in order for you to say that God is composite, you have to firstly establish that the attributes themselves are divine apart from God or in relation to God.
No, we would just have to establish that they are not the whole of the subject.
Yeah, we just have to establish that not the whole.
And that does not entail that God is composite.
Okay,
Yes,
what is a
because that's
part?
what a part is.
So a part is something of the subject that isn't the whole of the subject.
But it's a description.
Now again, yeah, but the description
that's-
signifies
that's the
something
obvious.
in reality that isn't the whole of the
Yeah, of
subject.
course.
But the
Look,
description
look, for
is
instance-
not something
So for instance-
individual existence. The description is describing something.
exactly.
Do you understand that point?
Yeah, I understand.
Really
What is the thing
Good.
describing?
So-
What is it describing?
Describing the essence of God.
Okay, so when you say knowledge, you're just describing the essence.
Yep. In a descriptive sense, it is nothing more than a descriptive abstract descriptive abstract sense.
Okay,
so for instance, when I say knowledge has Mansoor has knowledge.
Yeah.
When I say Mansoor has knowledge, I'm not talking about Mansoor and knowledge, such that Mansoor is a composite part. No sane individual is going to come along and say.
Every
Mansoor's
single
knowledge
As soon as you
is a
claim
part
that
of
Mansoor has
Mansoor.
knowledge,
Actually, I would argue
knowledge is composite.
I would argue in the opposite. You're misunderstanding the point.
Where is it?
We're saying that Mansoor is composite because he has knowledge. Now, this
Exactly.
is the point. When I refer to Mansoor
can you-
has...
Mansoor,
hold on,
can you-
if I may finish.
Can I see
when I
your
say that
knowledge?
Mansoor...
Okay, you've been hiding this for a long time.
Yeah.
I want to see your knowledge right now.
Well,
Yeah.
no one's asking you to see it. A part doesn't have to be seen. We've already
Yeah, a
established
part
that.
doesn't have to
And so
be
therefore,
physical.
your definition of composite is something that
Metaphysical
I would, and most people would disagree with. They would
No, actually, every meteorologist would just agree with what a part is.
Meteorologist.
Meteorologists like who?
Yeah, you can look at
Like whom?
the individual that, I think, was it Noonan that wrote the SCP entry for this year?
You need to consult with him.
No.
It's so obvious that you
I'm
need to
saying
consult with him.
I'm trying to make sure that I cite the individual correctly, but it's in the SCP entry for what a part is.
Okay, I'll be sure to go home and check that out.
Absolutely,
Thank you very much.
So a part.
Thank you very much for your time, my friend.
Take care, bro.
Thank you.
Honestly, your bid
You're a
is
clever individual.
absolutely
Unfortunately,
amazing.
sometimes people they're overwhelmed by their own self. You know what I mean?
Well, I guess I'm
They're
humble and I'm
overwhelmed.
overwhelmed at the same time. Then.
No worries, mate. As long as you're humble, as long as you have that attribute of humility, and that you're not a composite being such that humility exists apart from yourself.
Absolutely, it is
Take
part
care,
of me
sir.
though, and you know that. Take care, though.
That is a part of you.
It is a part, man.
Oh, don't leave him hanging.
Don't leave him hanging, bro. So, man, as we were saying,
You're coming, yeah?
I'm coming.
I still want to see this knowledge for me.
I'm summarizing.
So, as we were saying,
No. I'm speaking.
Well, hold on.
I'm speaking. I'm speaking.
I know you're speaking, but that just means that
Okay.
I was.
See you later.
You want to leave?
Because I was speaking and you're not allowing me to
No,
speak.
I was actually speaking when you were dapping him up, and I was going to clarify
No.
something.
You're
I
not
was
telling-
speaking.
I
wasn't done. I was still speaking. Yeah, exactly.
Done with who?
Not with you.
But we
done
haven't.
with you.
You were speaking to him, but I was
I wasn't
clarifying back
speaking
to the
him.
question.
You were dapping him up, and I was speaking
Maybe I
to
can
you.
speak to you because you're not easy to speak to.
I know, and that's
Do you know why?
a shame.
Do you know
but
why?
that
Do you know
doesn't
why?
matter.
Shall I tell you why?
Because you don't.
Because
like
you don't
speaking
allow
to
people to speak. So,
Alright, I
here-
allow
bad
many
boy.
people to
Okay,
speak.
Thomas,
right?
Thomas,
But that just
Thomas,
means that you're basically
do
complaining about.
you believe that the logos of God and
He's trying to
God
run away
is
from
the
metaphysical
same?
This is just a tu quo que fallacy.
Excuse me, I'm asking you a
Go
different
again.
question.
So
altogether.
what he's doing is he's
Okay,
trying to
fellas.
say you
All right,
have this
thank you very
problem,
much.
you're
Hey,
tradition.
Dawah, follow me
It's
on
not
Twitch.
actually solving the problem.
SIIG10.
Oh yeah. Don't subscribe to any